And tonight we are very honored to have the one and only, the author of the documents.info, the author of The Midnight Rider Rides Again, which as of today is actually labeled as a #1 bestseller in the judicial category on Amazon, the one and only Derek Jonhson. Derek, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good, other than the weather down here. So if the audience will bear with us, the delay a little bit. So just watching the storms roll in. So
yeah, there is a little bit of a delay, guys, because Derek is having storms in there. So apologize if there's any delay on that, but we can hear you loud and clear, my friend. And Mark, how are you tonight, my friend?
I am doing wonderfully. Absolutely wonderfully.
So, Derek, we hopped on backstage, and I said to you, I said, "Are you having fun yet?" Because it has been a week to remember, and you have been out there as usual. You've been one of the most steady and consistent people in this operation, in this movement for the last few years, since you went viral back in August of 2022. And it's been the same case with current events, in particular the assassination that wasn't. And we're going to have a lot to talk about on that. Obviously, since we were last live on Saturday, you had Biden, or the entity known as Biden, stepping down. This is actually the front page of the New York Post today, the end. So we've entered full-on crazy town. I'm hearing everything today from Biden is dead to the internal fighting with the Democrats, to a lot of people online noticing the signatures don't match, and all these different anomalies that we're seeing continue to pile up. But I wanted to tell you guys a quick story before we hop into it, because it relates back to kind of everything we're going through right now. I think it's important to share this kind of stuff. Whether people realize it or not, the work that people like Derek have done and the consistency of his message, pointing people to the documents, pointing people to the anomalies. I mean, Derek has been on a tear just over the last week on his social media, just pointing out all the different anomalies with the assassination attempt that really point back to what he and I and many other people have been saying for a long time at this point, which is that we're watching a staged movie. And whether or not we want to argue about who did it, who set it up, and we're certainly going to talk about that, the bottom line is people are seeing it now. The matrix is starting to crack. The conversation online, just over the last few days, you've had Fox News talking about Trump playing Nessa Norma and how it connects to the sum of all fears, which is directly from the Q drops. You have Biden's, fake resignation or fake letter from him stepping down, going viral, with people pointing out, like Derek has, the difference in the signatures. All these different things that we were called conspiracy theorists for over the last few years are all starting to bubble back to the surface now. And people are taking notice. And I had my own experience yesterday, which I'll tell you guys quickly. I actually, anybody that's been watching me for a long time, I talk about the importance of these get-togethers, because so many of us that might otherwise walk down to the corner restaurant and the corner pub and talk about what's going on in the world, we can't do that right now. But actually yesterday down here in Florida, I walked over to a local watering hole, which I don't often do anymore. And I was sitting at the bar. The people next to me were talking about Biden. And I just kind of looked over and they caught my eye, and I kind of chuckled along with them. And then the woman looked at me, she goes, because they're all gone anyway. And I said, what was that? The husband goes, yeah, they're all down at Gitmo anyway. And I looked at them and I said, yeah, they are. And they looked, and their interest kind of peaked up. We're like, because I don't think any of us had ever run into somebody before in a public space, and certainly not with that kind of conversation. And, as it turns out, Derek, they watch you. They know all about everything that's going on. They, watch a lot of the same people we do. And we had a great conversation, and they were sitting there just kind of, lamenting the fact that more and more people don't see how ridiculous it is right now. But I think at the end of the day, we all kind of came to the conclusion that the reason it's so insane is exactly what's making people starting to question everything. So it was a good experience, and I think that we have to just focus on, we're going to talk about all the different things, the anomalies. We'll talk about the details of it, but outside of these podcasts, I want people to really focus on the results, right? Focus on the fact that people are talking about this stuff, even if they don't agree with us. They are putting stuff out. The White Hats are putting stuff out so fast and so furious right now that it's forcing a conversation on all fronts. And at the end of the day, even if they don't get what we're about to talk about here, that's all that matters. So, Derek, you've been out there, busy as usual this last week. But before we hop into any of the details of some of these events, like what are you seeing in your travels as far as the effect that all of the, really everything from the craziness of the debate into that crazy press conference, the assassination attempt, to the RNC, the blackouts, to everything that's going on. What do you see out there as far as the effect it's having on some people?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just got back from Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and there's a lot of people. I had a matter of fact, a young lady in a brewery up there who worked at a brewery, probably in her late 20s, somewhere in there, had heard who I am, and we were having a little get together with my manager and different people. And her main question was just like something like, well, how do you feel about gay people? I'm like, is that your least of your concerns, or is that the greatest of your concerns? Which one is that? Is it your least or greatest? And she said, that's my greatest. I said, well, if that's your greatest, then that's easy. I'm a United States veteran. My role is not to condemn you as your lifestyle. My role is to protect you as an individual. You get to make that choice. I don't. I'm not God. I can't tell you how to live your life. I can't tell you who to worship, who to serve, what to believe in, and things of that nature. However, in order for you to have your lifestyle, you need a foundation that sets up that doesn't have anything to do with someone interpreting it the wrong way. I say it's all up to interpretation. If the federal government interprets it the wrong way, then you're doomed. If they interpret it the wrong way for me, I'm doomed. We have to have a federal government that works for both of us and a lot of the entities that got put in there. So the conversations I've had with people, I don't shy away from it out there. And most of the conversations I've had across the country that were in a typical normal setting, they always go, wow, I do know something's not right. Something just don't look right with him tripping upstairs, not down, and doing all the things. So that they see some of these things and I'm like, well, there's an answer to that. But there's a lot of people all over the country, but what typical Southerners would say out West or all of us on the East joke about the West being where land went to die out there. All the people moved out West and they're wacky, but I'm like, no, they're actually not. There's a lot of people in California that knows what's going on. People are tired of it. They see the same stuff over and over, the same like President Trump talked about, all these people who say what you want to hear, but they never back it up. But especially in California, the gas prices are insane, and the cost of living. We were just talking about this other day. A friend of mine was like, a shack out there, little bitty tiny 900 square foot house is $600,000. And you can get one of those down here in the South for 10 grand. And so there's a lot of people who are starting to see the inconsistencies. And that's why it's so important for people to see why President Trump's put into place is that broke that up, that put in there that, yes, you can have a strong defense budget and an economy and not start a war. So that's what people are not seeing. But a lot of people out there are seeing that. There's a ton of people, whether they know there's a blueprint, laws, orders, a military occupation in place. I think a lot of people are seeing it now. But, like me, I went viral with 9 people watching live. Now, I'm not picking on anybody out there, but I've had at least 5,000 people say they were one of those 9 people. I don't know how to know which one is. But I know with my visual watching my phone that day in my hand, I saw 9 people. 9 people led me to, I don't know what my numbers are. I don't even keep up with that, but it's somewhere 700, 800,000, somewhere there. I mean, so when 800,000 people take what we're doing and are spreading it, then look at the power of what people are doing. So, yeah, I believe that enough people, I think it's kind of also one of those where those that didn't want to admit that they voted for President Trump, but they really did behind closed doors. I think a lot of that's still happening right now as well, that you know, they know socially they have to appear liberal, but fiscally it ain't working. So I think a lot of people are still scared to admit that they know something's not right, or either they know something is going on, what we all know. But I think they're, like we were just talking about, I think their little circles don't allow that if their little circle isn't in a majority of what we know versus them being the minority. But, and then some people, probably it just depends on where they are and if it's a job or whatever, that probably smarter to be quiet in another manner right now, just in case there was some form of discrimination out there until we can all get to a place of the great reveal.
I think that our silent majority that we were has reached the point where we need not be silent anymore. I think a lot more people, I've noticed it for a long time, how many people get and understand the fact that there are things wrong and things need to be fixed, but they're really not aware of what's going on. But there are also a lot more people. We've watched our audience grow, and we're blessed to have a bunch of people who do get it, and they really truly get it and understand what's going on, and understand the fact that we all need, for this to succeed, we all need to get along and help each other out. And that's a big, huge plus. So it's starting to take off, and it's starting to take off in the right direction. I think it's at the right time too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Derek highlights something that we mention a lot on this channel, that the people are beginning to see it, but you have to understand that we have just lived through possibly the worst decade of government-sponsored psychological manipulation, possibly in human history. They've been working on separating us and making it so that we are afraid to discuss anything. You're afraid to discuss politics. You're afraid to discuss COVID. You can't talk about diet. You can't talk about doctors. They split us on everything. So it's going to take a little while for people to recover from an environment where if you said the wrong thing to the wrong people, it caused all sorts of problems, like Derek said, with work, with everything else. I mean, it really has been, but it's important to know, it's important to focus on what Mark and Derek both said, which is that the people are seeing it, and that you have to just realize I think that we are, we talk about waking up, and there's different levels of waking up. And if people are waiting for everybody to be like those people I ran in at the bar yesterday, knowing about Q and everything, it's probably going to be a while before that happens. But that's not where we need to be for this to end. We need people to be aware of the problem so people can accept the solution. And I do think we were there. I think we are well within a point where 75% of the population is not happy with what's going on. I mean, it could be more. And we have to understand that we're still dealing with a population that is shell-shocked, if you will, from what's gone on over the last number of years. And just to remember that this whole operation that's going on is based on the notion of mass formation psychosis. And that works in both directions, right? If you watch Matthias Desmond, he talks about basically you can get about 5% of the population. And if you do it properly, you can get that to influence the other 95%. And that's what they're banking on. All of these different things that we're seeing, the pageantry around Trump, the optics of everything that went on last weekend, the imagery, the notion of a fighter, the quite frankly, the white hat propaganda being pushed out, about Trump being one of the toughest men in the world, which he is, but it's clearly being amplified. You do that enough, and they're banking on the fact that people are, let's face it, guys, we talk about it in sports, right? People love a winner. They love front runners. So I think people right now are also underestimating the power that low IQ voter has to kind of just go along with whatever they're told. We are banking on that. We might get frustrated by those people, but the white hats are using that to their advantage. And they know that they've gotten us, like Derek said, they've gotten us to a point where each of us can individually influence tens of thousands of people to get the critical mass out there. And they're banking on the rest of the people that don't really care are just going to go along with what everyone else is doing. And the way you have this scripted up and they're systematically destroying fake Biden and amplifying President Trump, it's inevitable that it's going to work. It's working already, and I think it's inevitable that it's going to work. Derek, you agree?
Yeah, and talking about, I just saw a cool comment earlier about Obama propaganda. Well, there you go. There's someone who's fully awake in this group. I'm sure they're talking about the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 that Obama, reversed in 2012, where the media could use propaganda, even more so than what they were already doing in the organic feature. But to legalize that in another manner, that the journalists and everybody could do that. And then also Mark Twain. Mark Twain's probably one of the greatest poets of all time, who said it's easier to con people than to convince them they've been conned. And then he also says, though, for the patriots, all of us that are going through it, is that, in the beginning of a change, the patriot is ridiculed, scorned, and mocked. Until his cause succeeds, then the timid will join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. So, like when you're right now, what I keep telling people is that, there's 3 months left, really. President Trump now is going to be in another phase of the operation, but President Trump has outlined this vocally, disclosure that I will be free November the 5th, 2024, the final battle, the great liberation. So we only have 3 months left. So really, right now is the rapid fire, the chaos. This is the firefight that veterans that we know about. This is when crap hits the fan, you really are tested of what kind of warrior you are. All right, that's why in the military, they train us in chaos. That's why it's yelling, cussing, screaming. It's 90-0 all the time. I've heard people, and I don't mean this condescendingly, I've heard people say that I didn't join the military because I couldn't handle the yelling and cussing. Well, they do that for whenever there's pandemonium and, crap hits, the other word hits the fan. If you can hold your hand steady in that and you can stay focused in that environment, then you can work in anything, because that would be the worst extremity. And right now we're in that right now. That's why I told everybody, my followers, that, hey, if you're reacting, if your emotions are anywhere shaky, unstable, bitter, angry, frustrated, mad, sad, or whatever it is. And I say, I'm not knocking prayers, but now's not the time to be saying, oh, we're praying for Donald Trump. You should have been praying for him a long time ago, because that wasn't Donald Trump in the first place. And then 2, you shouldn't be shaky right now. The Bible talks about faith, and I'm not here to preach, but the Bible does talk about faith. You can't build. What do you build your faith on? Is it on shifting sands or on a solid foundation? Well, Donald Trump gave us the foundation, not me. I mean, I may have made it clearer for people, but I didn't write it or pass it. So, we're in the true moment of testing your faith right now. Like, now's not the time to be jumping the ship or whatever, acting all whatever. Now is the time where we really decide and find out, what kind of warrior you are. So that's my take on it, is that, it's going to be rapid fire. It was supposed to be rapid fire, but if you're reacting that way, then you need to go to a solid foundation and realize that, hey, my whole outlook is, if I'm going to die or whatever I'm doing, if I'm going to die, then I'm going to go down swinging. I'm not going to curl up in a wall or a corner of this buckle, let's see, I'm pointing the wrong way, but this buckle back here, was it's got an inscription on it. I got to put my own personal slogan on it. It says baptism under fire. All right, your faith is no good unless it's tested. Your faith is no good unless it's been under fire. Faith is just a word until it's tested. Then we see what kind of faith you got. All right, so that's anyway, it's a metaphor, but anyway, I just think people should be right now. You should be just like, except for yelling at God, you should look like Lieutenant Dan on top of that ship going, yeah, baby, because we're getting to the finale, and President Trump will be exonerated, not acquitted, exonerated, and he's not being exonerated for Dave and Mark and everybody else here. He's being exonerated for all the people who hated and ridiculed and mocked him and scorned him and all those things. That's the ones that has to see the exoneration, not me and you. All we do is just keep supporting him. And I supported him from day one of the escalator, right? So his exoneration ain't for me. It's for all these who hated and ridiculed and judged him, So anyway.
Well, we're finally at the point where we're out of the eye of the storm. The eye of the storm is where it's the calmest. We watched the storm come in, and we had to deal with all the slings and arrows of the libtards and the rest of them telling us that we're conspiracy theorists, we don't know what we're talking about, we're dreaming, blah, blah, blah. But now we're out of the eye of the storm, coming out on the other side, watching the winds shift. And everything that was thrown at us now is starting to come to light, even for the normies. And they don't quite know where to go with that. So there's a lot of confusion.
And the backside of the storm of a hurricane is always the worst, because when that wind shift, you prepared for the first wind, right? But then you don't know how that second, when it rotates another way, that's when the worst damage comes from a hurricane. And I grew up in the South going through them, and so it's a great analogy to bring up that you can prepare all you want, but then you find out what your faith is made of whenever that backside comes through, because that's when the hell breaks loose.
And they told us that the end is going to be worse and harder than the beginning.
That's right.
But we're all prepared for it.
The end won't be for everyone. That's what you said, right? The end won't be for everyone. I think as we talked about the other day with Patriot Underground, I think what you, Mark, and I, and Derek, and a few other people experienced over the last week is exactly that. Again, no matter where you land on the different events that have been going on, the people that are believing it to be real, it's obviously been very jarring and upsetting to them. And the people like us that believe it was an op have had to take the incoming fire, as I said to Derek before, which has been kind of hot and heavy because of the stance we've taken. But I think that's actually a really good segue to kind of touch on that a little bit. And Derek, I want to ask you the same question I asked our good friend Patriot Underground the other day, who has also been on the exact same train as you and I when it comes to the assassination attempt. We came out right away. In fact, that night, less than 2 hours after it happened. And, I told the story. I mean, it was my mother that called me that let me know it was happening. And I literally said to her, I go, yeah, it's staged. Let me take a look. It's exactly what I said. And I turned it on. I looked at it for 2 seconds. I was like, this is what I believe. And then we went out and talked about it. We did a whole show going through all the different anomalies. But my question to you is, my experience was as follows. We looked at it. We broke it down. We all gave our opinion. Dr. Scott Young was actually on with us that night. He was on board with it as well. We all did it. We did a 2-hour show breaking it down. And then as the week has gone on and more and more and more stuff comes coming out and more insane headlines and impossibilities and comms and contradictions and images and video have come out, I've actually moved further into the camp that everything we saw was a staged operation. In other words, there hasn't been a single thing that's come out that has caused me to say, maybe we got to take a look at this one. No, quite the contrary. It's been the more stuff that comes out, the more I realize that none of this is possible in a real world scenario. And because of that, it just furthers my opinion of what I saw. And you, I think you were probably one of the first ones, if not the first, to get to X when that happened. I remember looking at your X, and it was like the first thing you just said, everyone calm down. This is all part of the plan. Like, you were right on it. And you haven't budged from that as usual since. So my question to you is, well, in a week out from this event now, with everything you've seen, have you gotten any less convinced or more convinced that what you saw was a staged operation?
Well, I got a text message from a buddy of mine that's always around President Trump as I was laying this out before the attacks came yesterday, today, et cetera. But, which is fine. I mean, the thing is this, is like, I want people to know one thing, and it's not about me as far as like, hey, it's about me. But then when attacks do happen, then I kind of have to speak for where I stand and where I am in my life period, just where I'm at as, a young man. I'm still fairly young, I think. I'm a right 41 years old. So when I went in the military, my heart was where it was supposed to be. I knew, the chances that, what could happen and things of that nature. And I was fine with that. I was at peace with that. Because, my grandpa always told me, if you're going to do it, you need to be at peace with your heart and know where you are in your life. And if something does happen to you, then, you made that choice and it was for the right reasons. And, and so no one knows your video is going to go viral. It's not like when you're in country music, you try to make stuff go viral all the time and it never happens. So, and then the quote that the lady just put up a while ago about Mark Twain, about the day you're born and then the day you find out why. My whole life, I thought I was, going to be the next George Strait. I wanted to knock off George Strait. I wanted to have 60 #1 hits, and when I got in it, I realized, oh, this is difficult. And it's not difficult for the singing and the writing. It's a rigged system. Right. And I knew if God didn't want me through that, he wasn't going to put me through it. And, every day that I take slings and arrows, I'm like, God, you put me here. I didn't. And I know my character in my heart, but also warriors don't talk about themselves. However, when you're cut out for it, then you can take that. And so, this whole week has been because people gravitated to the emotion that someone died. Well, all before that, I don't know what the percentage of that would be, but all before that, a lot of those people, especially patriots, their motto was question everything. Then all of a sudden someone dies and I'm the villain because I'm showing you, well, the sounds are inconsistent. They all had an impact. The mainstream media reported 2 bullets. Where's the other 7 bullets? Where are they? They're not accounted for. What did they hit? They all had an impact sound. And so, there was so much stuff that was already up front and blatant obvious to me. When your ear's shot or anything like that, you don't react like he did. Like if that was a real scenario. I know plenty of people have been shot. And so, and they've all been shot in different areas. That wasn't their reaction. Especially when it's just the crown top of your ear. But especially right by your head, there's a lot of things as a shooter, a deer hunt, big game hunt, and then also being a veteran. There's just so much things that if people will just chill out, like I always say, the Native American chief they became chiefs because they learned patience. They learned to be calm. They learned to sit back and observe before they ever did anything. They had a well-organized plan. The Comanches were so lethal because they called them Comanche Moon. That's why it's a book out there. There's a book. It's called Comanche Moon. You go read it. Great book. And it talks about how lethal the Comanches were because they could shoot an arrow off the top of a man, could shoot an apple off the top of a man's head with a bow and arrow at full speed on their horses, bareback. That's how lethal they were at midnight, at night, not in the daytime. All right. That's how lethal they were. All right. So in order to get that lethal, that means it comes with a lot of study, a lot of training, a lot of observations, and also paying attention to details. There were so many inconsistencies just straight out the gate that what my point was people, is it's a military occupation. And I did a video last night, and it's gotten more views than I have on most of my other videos in a little while. But we had like 159,000 views within just a day. And I'm like, look, you can keep shooting the messenger. That's the classic role to do, which keeps you in the classic position you've always been in, shoot the messenger. But if you pay attention to President Trump, what are the liberals saying right now? Like, if you get on Twitter right now, all the low-level liberals, I'm not talking about the officials, but the low-level liberals are now twisting the whole age and cognitive ability of Donald Trump versus Kamala. See what they were doing with President Trump and quote-unquote Biden. Now they're flipping that narrative. Okay, so that's our foundation. So let's talk about age and cognitive abilities. So if Donald Trump is now being questioned for his age and cognitive skills, why would Donald Trump have the jersey, the name of this firefighter, misspelled on the back of a jersey? All right, that would bring into question his cognitive ability. And why would he have that there? So instead of looking at the flip side that someone died, how about you look at the inconsistencies of everything that stacks up? Then go look at President Trump. Geometry proves. Now, I know geometry was tough for people, but geometry proves that Donald Trump didn't get shot in the ear. All right, he didn't. And then the narrative that there's a second shooter. Well, the only reason that's perfect and fine to bring that up is for the fact that the bigger picture of what they're showing you or what the FBI and CIA have done all these years. And it's a great point. So whichever way you want to split the hair, I could take the split of the hair and go with that narrative and go, okay, well, if you want to go with that narrative, then here you go. They're showing you, they get ready for what Donald Trump said he's going to do. He's going to unveil all the JFK files when he's a sitting visual president again, not a wartime president. He's going to unveil. There's certain things you can do as a president by laws as prescribed, and a wartime president in a military occupation. So they're getting people ready for the unveiling of all the corruption you've seen. And that also includes school shootings as well. The shoes. Let me get my shoes. Get my shoes. The shoes. I mean, he's showing you all these inconsistencies. In the mainstream media, they ask him, why'd you say that? He said, the Secret Service tackled me so hard, I came out of my shoes. They didn't tackle him. He went to the ground on his own. He fell down on his own. They never tackled him. Not one did they tackle him. Then they picked him up. All right. There's no blood on his hands. Nowhere, even on the ground. There's blood right on the tip of his finger and right here, which would be an activator. The blood don't flow like this. Your blood don't flow from your ear straight down here. It would flow like that. All right. There's so much inconsistencies. But my thing was I had to make sure when I was typing this out that, people need to know that, no, I'm not saying it's a publicity stunt. It's a military occupation. This is a takedown of the swamp. And when he says, drain the swamp, most of the people who were slinging arrows at me, I'll go ahead and put it on me, maybe at y'all too, but all of us that took the heat for this, most of these people were the same people. Drain that swamp. Drain that. You're watching the swamp being drained and don't even realize it. Because what you want to do, if Dave or Mark, well, just since it's me and you here, I'll just pick on both of you, not alienate one of you. But if Dave or Mark did something to me and they hurt me or spied at me or did something that was just whatever it was, what would be better though to let them hang themselves versus me tell on them, right? No matter how much it hurt me, no matter how much I'm sitting here going, these two SOBs, I want to just bam, hit them like that, like no matter what they did, it would be better for them to implode themselves sometimes, depending on what it is, to the public than it would be me to look like a snitch and a tattletale and, oh, he just wants attention. And so what you're watching, the military occupation kind of sets that parameter. It sets this edges of this is the playground and we won't let it get past that. But we, the people, get to operate in this as well. All right. We, the people, need to be involved. So, like I was on Elijah's streams. about 2 months ago, I think it was, and I set it on fire about the border. And the comment box was annihilating me because I kept saying it's central casting. It is. I didn't say that. President Trump says that. How can you support? It's not me. Shoot the messenger, though. Shoot the messenger. Well, they were annihilating me. Well, he told me about it. Went back on the video, and he said, maybe we can brush up on that. No, I didn't brush up on anything. I went right back into it. I'm sorry you can't handle what President Trump says, but guess what? You're right where we need you to be, though, because now you're paying attention. At least your attention. Now you're paying attention to the stuff that matters, not the stuff that don't matter. Now we have you where we need you to educate you. So it's the same thing with this. If it took death to get everybody stirred up and all their emotions, but you're finally listening, now you're willing and can be accepting of what's in place. Because what did Joe Biden, what did they make him say just the other day about the immunity case? He said it does what? It sets a dangerous precedent. And then he said it undermines the rule of law. And then he said no president is above the law. So guess what he's saying now? We can talk about laws and orders. Well, let's look at the laws and orders in place. None of them are by Joe Biden, even if you think he's real. Everything that's been done in place by the military and what's been going on is all Donald Trump's laws and orders. So now the people, we can get them to say, hey, this was never about your lifestyle and all these other things. We got you right here. Let's show you where you've been duped all these years. And that's what people's watching. So, it's just so much inconsistency, though, with the shooting and all the other things. The biggest thing I saw out of it, once again, is that when people are a veteran or they are a deer or a hunter, when you shoot a weapon, it makes a pow, pow. Well, that first pow is the impact. Then the gunfire sound comes. Right. Well, all 9 of those rounds that were fired that day had an impact. But the first 3 shots were 3 seconds apart. Pa-pow, pa-pow, pa-pow. Well, there's only 2 bullets accounted for. Well, if the one bullet passed President Trump's ear and hit the pole back there, the one bullet that's accounted for, and the other bullet hits this firefighter, all right, where's the 3rd round at? Where did it go? It was in the same time sequence. So it had to hit somewhere in the same vicinity because it had the same time sequence and the same impact. So where's that bullet? What did it hit? It's not accounted for. And then also, if a bullet hits the back of a guy's head, a 223 or 5.56 NATO is a pretty big, it's not huge, but it's a big bullet. All right. So if it hits you in the back of the head, how was he able to jump on his family and defend his family? That also don't make sense. When a bullet hits you in the head, you're not jumping on anybody. You're falling on them, but you ain't jumping on them. All right. So the narrative is he was a hero by jumping on his family. All right. So what? Okay. So why am I the villain for questioning that? I'm trying to figure out did he fall or did he jump on them? Those are 2 different kind of actions, falling and jumping. All right. So if a bullet hits you in the back of the head, a 223 round, that's what we use we use the 5.56 NATO. All right. In a M4. Okay. So, or AR-15, whatever you want to call them out there. All right. So I'm just saying, if that bullet hits you in the head, you ain't doing anything but whatever. I don't want to paint no pictures here. But you're out. You're gone. Okay. And so the ear, President Trump would have had to, with that angle there, it's a perpendicular angle. So geometry, even with him turning his head slightly like he did the whole time, if you go back and watch all the President Trump speeches, he favors his left side more. Why all of a sudden is he doing the right? And he entered the stage on the right. There's always a double entrance, like a walkway at most of his rallies. Why is the only entrance to the right? All right. Why didn't the shooter take a shot when he entered the stage? If you go back and watch the video, he entered and he stood there on the right, not a lot closer, 20 feet closer. But then he slightly turned his head upwards, not this way, upwards. So geometry, it defies all that. A 223 don't hit a piece of flesh and ricochet. It just don't do that. So, you know, there's so much stuff that shows that if that bullet hit him right here at a perpendicular, it would have pierced the skull. It wouldn't have gone above the top of the crown and over behind to a pole. It's just impossible. His head was not turned that much. All right. So, you know, I guess there's just so much stuff that once again, the sounds, the sequence. That's why I went to the range myself. I went to an open range, a gravel pit, and I put my camera 3 times the distance that the media was that day away, and my 9mm at 75 yards away from the camera or more, you could hear it clear as a bell on a cheap, old school iPhone 11 Pro, a 9mm, which is a smaller round than a 223. And I also shot a 30-06 and a 7mm Magnum, which are bigger calibers than a 223. Yes, but you can still hear them, and you know you can tell the inconsistencies. But there's a lot of things that just don't make sense that day if you're someone, you know, that's whatever side, whatever you're sitting on. But I know what a military occupation is, and that's what my live again last night. I'm like, I think so many people are not seeking to understand what a military occupation is and the appreciation of it and what it does and what it allows a wartime president to do versus a normal president. And then, you know, how a president can extend his power beyond what the Constitution was violated in 1951. So there's no question about that. It don't ever show in there where the Congress is to put a term limit on the president. So that was a violation already. But a president can extend his power. So people need to, if they would appreciate what a military occupation is, a continuity of operations and what it's doing, they would see that the next day they put out that the DHS was in control of this. We go look in the Federal Continuity Directive too. On page 24, it talks about active shooter. All right. So DHS, Department of Homeland Security, there's a lot of things that are showing people that this is a continuity of operations. This is all planned, not to panic. It's all part of it. But what do people do? Same thing with COVID, because it's health. Health, they panic, right? Well, this was a death involved. So people focus on that one thing and they're missing all the other things. And, you know, but it'll all come out in the end. I mean, President Trump's already said it.
You're talking about the bullets, right? And again, I'm on the same page with you. I know Mark and I are both on the same page. And you've been, like I said, you've been really like, well, first off, before I even go any further, I've been putting this up on the screen. But for anybody watching that is not familiar with Derek Jonhson and wants to know more about the documents he's talking about, you need to go to www.thedocuments.info or go to Amazon and buy Derek's book, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, because, you know, if you have any question, I mean, we could do a 10-hour show and probably not get through all the information that's on here, but this is hands down the most comprehensive guide you're going to find, that in his book, to what's going on right now. But you've been pointing out, I mean, so many things. And like I said, we could do a whole show on this, on all the inconsistencies that are here. And there's 2 points I want to get your feedback on. I mean, we've seen, I agree with you on the inconsistencies with the blood, the way it's on his face. The guy walks up with a towel, he wipes his face, but he somehow doesn't wipe the blood off for some reason. Donald Trump, he's got blood running down his face and he's holding his ear, but there's no blood on the hand. You pointed out the sounds of the shots, the angle of attack, the firefighter's body that, you know, nobody showed up with a backboard or EMTs or anything. They just went George Floyd style and they picked the guy up by his legs and carried him out. Just all these different crazy inconsistencies. And we've pointed out here the whole thing, the problem with these narratives, the way they're putting it out now, and I actually don't think it's a problem. It makes my position a lot more comfortable, in that so many of the things they're telling you right now in the mainstream media can't coexist together, right? So they're telling you now, most of the people here and most of the people that follow you, Derek, that watch your work, have been on board at least for the recent history, but for years in some cases, on the notion of, continuity of government and that we're under a military occupation. There's no doubt about that in my mind, and I'm guessing in most of the people here in their minds. But in order for the narrative to be true about the Secret Service, I mean, that's where, you've done the technical analysis and all this, but just the common sense analysis fails at every step. You can't be going around after telling people, like we have for 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, that we're under a military occupation, and then come Monday morning, you're screaming on social media that the Secret Service failed Donald Trump and the Secret Service director failed her, and they put a 5'5" overweight woman to protect his body. Like, no, that means you have to completely throw out everything you've thought about the military occupation to think that at this point in the game, the United States military chose to make a decision that I wouldn't make from my basement here, which is to put a 5'5" body woman to protect a 6'3" man. It wouldn't happen. DHS, in my opinion, Derek, and you can comment on this in a minute, if we're under continuity of government, people still believe that the Secret Service is protecting Donald Trump. It's the United States military. There's no DHS influence. There's no director that can screw this up. This is a military operation. So if you're going to buy into all that stuff and go ranting and raving on Twitter, forget whether somebody died or not. Just start with that and work your way backwards, and then start to look in some of the things that Derek and many others have pointed out. And Derek, I want to get your opinion, because you were talking about the rounds just now, and then again you can comment on whatever you like. But this is where this is where I'm talking about. The more stuff comes out, the more unbelievable it is. This is a letter, and Donald Trump speaks. We know he speaks in code. He speaks in comms, and generally when he brings up a story, there's a reason for it. Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes it's pretty obvious. Saturday was pretty obvious. He started talking about Dr. Ronnie Jackson again, which he hadn't for a while. And he tells that same story. And usually brings up a name. There's a reason for it. And sure enough, what did we get that day? A letter from Dr. Ronnie Jackson. So this is Trump telling you, take a look at something, in my personal opinion. And in this letter, and this goes directly to what Derek was just talking about with the rounds, in paragraph 3, it talks about the bullet passing, striking the top of the right ear, and the bullet track produced a 2-centimeter wide wound. And at the bottom it says there was no sutures, which means stitches. No sutures were required. And I said, well, isn't that convenient? Because then it means it's not likely going to leave a scar, and there's no evidence. Now, since then, I found a video, and it's going viral on YouTube, of 2 gentlemen, a group of ex-military, that actually recreated the impact using an AR-15 and a gel, it's a dummy made of gel. In other words, it's got the same elasticity and impact characteristics as a real human head and ear would. And Derek, I want to show you this and get your opinion on this, because this letter and what I'm about to show you is what I mean by the narratives can't coexist. One hand, we have Dr. Ronnie Jackson saying 2 centimeters, no sutures, all fine and dandy. And let's look at what happened to this year when these guys reproduced the shot. I'll just freeze it there. Derek, does that look like a shot that would produce a wound that needs no stitches?
He wouldn't have an ear right now. It don't matter if it even just grazed it. He could still have an ear, but he'd have a missing piece. I was under the understanding that it grazed the top of the ear, but even that right there, if that's where the bullet hit, the geometry don't even suit that in the first place, because President Trump, once again, he's standing with his body, like his torso. He's standing like this, and he turns his head like that, like he does. He turns his head sideways. All right. The shooter's perpendicular. Once again, so it would have hit him. It don't matter if it was the top, bottom of the ear, middle of the ear, the front center. The front center, the back center. It doesn't matter where it was. See, there's the red right there is the shooter. All right, I believe. I think that's where they said it was.
Yeah, the red is the 20-year-old. The green is the other roof, and the yellow is the water tower. And it is a little cut off at the bottom, but basically Donald Trump was facing perpendicular to this road right here.
See,
so the angle is.
I use geometry with the left ear because that's your visible ear. So his left ear would have been inconsistent with where the microphone on the other side of the microphone, because he tilted. Well, the microphone would have been whoever's sitting there in front, right? If someone had a weapon and they're sitting down like this, they would have been able to make that trajectory go up on the left ear. So all you do is take the same math. Plus, his head was tilted, so his left ear was tilted down. His right ear is tilted up. So that has nothing to do with still perpendicular. Once again, it would still be a direct impact on the ear. And if it was the center of the ear, when you hear the pa-pow, that pa-pow, and I just happen to have some bullets right here. This is a 30-06 round right here. This is the lead. All right. When you hear that first pa-pow, that means that lead right here, this casing comes out. That lead, that means it's flat. It flattens. It hits it hits some kind of impact. Well, a bullet that grazes the ear, it's not gonna have an impact like that. It's not gonna flatten that bullet out. And it's not also gonna have a pa-pow sound. It's gonna have an echo. All right, because it didn't, that pa-pow, that first pow is that bullet expanding at whatever it hit, if it's a tree or if it's a deer, or even a human in a solid area, right? It wouldn't do that on a piece of flesh. It's the same idea as when I'm hunting. I've had this happen 1 or 2 times before, and I get rad about it. But a twig out in front of me, a twig can just send the bullet off, but it won't make that whole bullet impact. It makes an echo, and that's the first thing that people need to pay attention to. Don't matter about the sound of the actual, was it really a 223 or paintball gun sound? It sounds more like a paintball gun sound recorded. However, even if they would have recorded a 223 and played that out, you still got to listen to what they made it sound. It was a pa-pow, pa-pow, and it was 3 seconds apart. So the sequence, see, 1, 2, 3. It wasn't a 3-round burst, which is what a semi-automatic weapon, an AR-15 has. A single, means they have to squeeze the trigger every time, or put it in burst mode, which is a 3-round burst, and it don't sound like that. It'll be a ba-da-da, ba-da-da, ba-da-da. It's a real quick round burst, and you only have to pull the trigger once in burst mode. It wasn't burst mode. It was single, but it was 3. Pow-pow, pow-pow, pow-pow. So where did the third round go? They're not accounting for the third round. So that's the first thing that still, once again, it will linger. The other thing in a real life scenario is this: you don't leave all these open head shots. If that was a real scenario, they would have gotten him out of there. All right. If that was a real scenario, he wouldn't have his head up and all this. And they show their hands kind of moving here. Their hands aren't covering his head. He's giving all kinds of shots. All right. And he's doing this little fist power thing, which is all symbolic for a good reason. All right. The other thing, if you're getting your butt shot at, the last of your concern is your ball cap. When you're worth $4 or $5 billion, that 45-47 ball cap ain't the only 45-47 ball cap. If you look in every picture, Secret Service is holding that ball cap up, even with the rag. You got the hat one and the rag in another. All right, that's another big optic right there as well. All right, in every photo. Now, I don't like saying stuff like I know that guy like he's my buddy. But I know one of the Secret Service guys that's in every shot. I've been around him. All right. Legit Secret Service guy. All right. So then you got to look at all the other rallies. At that point, that was the 74th rally. He had 73 rallies before that. First off, the first 31 rallies were called midterm rallies, which would be election interference. There's no such thing as a midterm rally. All right. There are rules to being a presidential candidate. Donald Trump has broken all those, and the media ain't said anything about it because it's an occupation, and he's not a former president. A midterm rally, no such thing as that. All right. So the 31 rallies, you got to listen to what President Trump shows you. all of his rallies, like you said it a while ago about it being planned way back here or other things. Well, it's all been planned way back here because of this. President Trump brags about what? And he don't mean it a bragging way for the liberals. If the liberals hear us talking about this, they'll take it the wrong way. But he brags about the crowd size. He also points out the mainstream media. Sorry, Mark, that's where you went, a long time ago. You're out of that now, thank God, right? But he points to them in the back always. He says them way in the back there, mainstream media way in the back there where they belong, all right? He talks about the crowd sizes. If you look at the aerial view of that audience, it wasn't as big as you think it was. It was very small, all right? The back stands of all rallies, his stands are real high. All of a sudden, they look like a 1A high school with about 5 rows up, which the angle would show you that not that high. All of a sudden, the media, where are they? They're in the middle. They're right dead center in the middle. They're not very back. All right. So there's a lot of things over there that show you all these things. So, I'm looking at the Secret Service, though, meaning like this. I think what they're trying to paint the picture for everybody more in-depthly is the fact that DHS and the FEMA are on your federal continuity directives. All right. That's an optic, like the lady said today, right? She or yesterday, whenever it was, but she said she got asked about the sitting president and the continuity of operations. And she says this, right? But getting back to Secret Service, what people need to go look at is the Secret Service website, .gov, and look at when they start protecting a presidential candidate versus a former president. All right. That's what people are missing, the 120-day window. Well, they were in that 120-day window. At last weekend would have been 113 days up to November. Okay, so that's very key because that sets a whole different narrative of what they're trying to paint a picture of and also the legalities around that. There's some visual, once again, around the FBI, the Secret Service, the DHS, and the 3-letter agencies that President Trump talked about all throughout 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. He said it wasn't the 3-letter agencies themselves. He said it's the senior level leadership in those, which he's painting to what? The corporation, and he's also alluding to what's coming with the JFK files.
Well, actually, Derek, go ahead, Mark.
Just my own edification, Derek. When you were at the gravel pit and you set your camera up and everything, how clearly did you catch that bullet on its way to the target?
How clearly did I catch the bullet on the way?
Yeah. On the video, how clearly did you catch it? Did you get it as clear as that?
You can't see no bullet. I don't know that's the other thing I tell people right there. I'm like, you can't. How many times would it take to shoot a weapon? There's another one right there. Like you can do like those guys did and do an impact. I don't know how long it would take to shoot a weapon and to capture a bullet. Like, I mean, you just don't. And it wouldn't look like that. It wouldn't look like a, what they call that, chemtrails. It looks like a chemtrail more than it looks like a bullet. A bullet don't look like that. I don't know how we can debunk that one because people ain't going to listen. I tried that one myself. I said, okay, so where did that bullet go? It traveled a little bit further than so they claimed that one of the bullets hit the pole behind him. All right. But they also claim that's the one that hit his ear. All right. So where's the third bullet? And it would take a trained ear to hear the difference in 15 or 20 feet difference. But once again, if you go listen to the first 3 shots, they're all in the same 1 second apart interval. Right. So they're pa-pow, pa-pow, pa-pow. Even if it traveled 20 or 30 feet more, you'd still be able to hear a little bit. It'd be a trained ear that would have to hear it. But that bullet, if that was real, traveled further than the bullet that hit the guy in the back of the head and wherever the other bullet. A bullet wouldn't make that sound going through an ear like that. It just wouldn't, unless it's a direct impact. So in all reality, we have two bullets not accounted for if they want to go with that theory. All right, because you would have heard a different sound of impact. But those other 5 rounds were delayed. So if they're going to, that's the other thing about a sniper is a sniper. The only reason a sniper would miss is if they were commanded to miss, to send a signal, to send a warning. Because snipers don't miss. I mean, I don't know how many people, I don't know how else to say that. We had Jaco, SEAL Team 6, 24 years, tell you we don't miss, all right, unless we are told to miss on purpose, to send a warning. Like that, to me, it's more like I wasn't a sniper. I don't pretend to be, but I'm giving kudos and credit to the snipers out there that they train for this year round. They can make a shot at 1,000 yards, wind, rain, hail, sleet, whatever it is, boom, and put it wherever they want it. So that I think that it's taken away as well. I want people to see that you take away from people who do this for a living, and they're not many of them. Right? They're not many. Jaco was trained by one of the greatest snipers of all time who just passed not long ago. But one of the snipers in history, he talks about that too. He found another sniper. They found each other at the same time, and he was just a hair shorter, a little quicker than him, and he put it right between the scope, right through the scope. So, ladies and gentlemen, that means whether he was a left-hander or right-hander, it went right through his eye. Bow. All right. I know that's gruesome, but some people have to hear that. Snipers, I can miss every now and then because I see a deer, big rat, and then my heart starts beating, and I'm not out there being like, trying to control my breath, and I'm like, oh, I got one shot. He's going to go in the bushes. So it's like snipers are polar opposite. They're trained, and if they can't make the shot, they won't. And I just wish people could understand it from that angle more, the military side, and giving kudos to those people. But there's so much that shows once again with the 120-day window. Also, what was said in the interview. The other thing is it's already in a judicial committee, like outlined, signed by Jim Jordan. I mean, in past, Mark, you've been doing this for 46 years. In past, I mean, think about how long it took all those years in the regular presidential 4 years for them to get one little thing, written up and to go investigate this. They already had this thing written up, last week, and already signed by Jim Jordan and already going into question these people, right? I mean, think about that,
Government has never moved that fast, ever.
Ever.
Derek, I wanted to get your take on, because we might as well now address the elephant in the room, which, as you touched on, was the notion that somebody died, and we talked about this extensively on Saturday. The psychology behind why they always have somebody die in a false flag, because that's the gateway to discernment in reality, right? In fact, the difference this time is it's interesting that we're getting blowback from our own community on this stance, yet in the public sphere, whoever's controlling and pulling the strings is pushing it all towards the left, which I find funny. They're calling the leftists, they're the ones saying that Trump did it to boost his poll numbers, and they're pushing it off on them. And that is why you don't see more people with any of these false flags. That's the reason we don't know about Sandy Hook. It's the reason we still haven't gotten to the truth about 9/11. It's the reason we haven't gotten to the truth about the Boston bombing, because they purposely install the narrative that one or more people died. This way, anybody that questioning it, you can simply turn around and say they're a horrible person for even questioning what they saw with their own eyes. And I think in this case, they're using it against they're using it against the leftists, and that's why you haven't seen that narrative blowing up. I think it's actually brilliant the way they did it. They did it in a way where the leftists that are looking, that would otherwise be able to say, look at how amazing this picture is, it's all too perfect. They staged this. They can't say anything because they're using that against them, which they've used against us for all these years.
100 trillion%. I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but I mean, it just.
No, go ahead, please.
Whatever percent that's just like above, there's no such thing above 100. But if there was ever a such thing above 100, Like you could double that. And I mean, that's what I've been trying to get people to understand. The laws and orders read perfect on paper. They read perfect. They've always read perfect on paper. It's what they've been doing behind the scenes when the people forgot to know this themselves. That's why they had to get people's attention to get back on what matters in life. All right. Now, you're not going to be able to quote it maybe like I can, but you need to know a general premise of how this works. The Constitution wasn't written for me and you if we never served in Congress. It was written for them, for us to keep them in check. That's why they call them representatives. Well, who are they representing? If the people don't know what's on paper, who are they representing? They started representing themselves. All right. So that is so perfect. Once again, that's what I've been telling my people out there. I said, look, have you seen one liberal in a limelight, even though some are under NDAs, but the ones that aren't, none of them are saying, you can't do that. You can't do that. None of them, not a one, have been saying it because they can't. So what they're using, see, everybody's been under this subversion of language and manipulation and deception for years, where they took the same stuff that we talk about. We the people, the Constitution, the Declaration, they all celebrate July the 4th the same we do. They drink their beer and have their barbecue, and they all claim to support the same thing. But when it comes down to it, they really don't. So it's a subversion of language, and it's also manipulation, deception, and all kinds of other things put in there. All right. So the laws and orders read perfect on paper. But that's where people will just flip it, just sit back, relax. Don't let death and COVID and all these other things get in your way, because once again, it's all under a military occupation. You got to know what that is, and then you'll appreciate it. But when you flip it, if Donald Trump was a former president, he's meeting with all these foreign leaders at Mar-a-Lago, private establishment. If he was a former president as a presidential candidate, that would be a violation of the Logan Act. What's the media doing about that? Nothing. They're not saying a word about it. All right. Donald Trump, the jersey, the name's misspelled. What's the media doing about it? Nothing. You're not seeing that. The little bit you're seeing when you understand a military occupation, the little bit you're seeing, they have to be a little bit right now because it's an occupation. All right. Because if they didn't do anything, you'd be like, well, that don't make sense. They're not putting out anything right now. They're all just about talking about Biden and this and Biden. So when you understand the mission and you see, like, this is the sitting prime minister. Well, no, take that back. That's Netanyahu. That looks like just like Viktor Orban. Before I read it, but Victor looks just like him too. But when you see a president meeting with all these leaders, that would be election interference. So he'd be going against his own law and order in place. That's why it pays to know what's in place. And then you'll see that, no, he wouldn't be able to do that. The media would annihilate him. If Vice President Biden and Obama hammered a 3-star General Michael Flynn over the Logan Act, what do you think they would do to Donald Trump, who came in and destroyed the corporation? That's also why you got to listen to language. What did Donald Trump Jr. say? That my dad took a bullet for democracy? See, that's got a different language in it. So that's hidden. We're not a democracy. When people say we're not a democracy, listen to what he said. He took a bullet for democracy from them, right? So this is all leading to the great exposure of that, all right? But when he says the best is yet to come, that's a chess term, the best. Like I was joking with these two a while ago. Like my goal wouldn't be to beat them. I would best them to where they'd have to say, you know what? I said what I said about Derek. I was wrong. And they had to face either humility or whatever, or fallout or whatever it may be. So President Trump was never about winning. This was never about President Trump in the first place. This is about his sacrifice, what he could do to contribute to his country. It just so happens to be the face of the whole thing. But once again, the best means when you're playing chess, the queen protects the king. If you knock the queen out, then you trap the king. Then you can sit there all day long and say, well, you're trapped. I got you trapped. And what now? You have to do what? They have to give up. So he's got Joe Biden and the Democrats trapped. That's why he says the best is yet to come, because the best is going to be exposing all this, but they're going to implode on their own. That's what they're doing. So the corporation's imploding, the democracy is imploding, and all their narratives that they used, the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ, all these things that they took, as President Trump said, they were all created for good reasons, but these senior level leaderships took them and used them as weapons. That's what they're imploding right in front of you on purpose. And it's beautiful. Like, and once you ever learn what a military occupation is, and then you flip that narrative and you see what they're doing, then you'll unite in another manner. Because everybody who's arguing right now that President Trump can't do this and he don't have that kind of power, you're wasting your time. And there's a lot of people still doing that. Why would you not want him to have that power? It's already been done before in World War II history. So why would you not want this? You should want this. You're watching the swamp being drained right in front of you.
And this is like the other, like we discussed before, the other end of the storm. As you come out of the eye, the winds have shifted. Anybody who studied jiu-jitsu, you use your opponent's kinetic energy against them, and you let them go through. And that's what we're doing. We're taking the Black Hats game, the Cabal's game, and we're playing it against them. And it's working perfectly.
You take their language and tactics and reverse it on them, and they can't say, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't, you can't do it. They can't do it. So, and then it does what to you, the people? Full disclosure. And then once you see it, on the flip side, you'll know what to look for next time, and you'll know when there's a tactic being used, whether it's local, state, federal, and even tribal for that matter.
Absolutely. Derek, the last thing I want to get your take on with regards to this, the assassination, is I know I've heard you talk about it before, and I've been, I think, literally putting it on speed dial on my Telegram channel is this article here regarding the secret undercover army of 60,000 people. And again, we've done shows on this with Mike King. We talked about the Patriot Underground, but I'm going to keep bringing this up because, and I want to get Derek's take on this, because where, he just laid out for the first hour here quite a detailed analysis, and there's many, many more things. And anybody that's been watching, either of us, this channel or Derek, I think is familiar with the inconsistencies of that event by now. But the piece that we're highlighting here, that the weapon that is a key component of a false flag, which is a death, that really has gotten people to back off of their position or change their mind or not look into it, is the notion that somebody passed away. And we just touched on why we believe they do that. And it's a well-established principle of the false flag. But in this case, where I have had some personal experience with people, and Derek, I'm sure, can speak about this too. I posted about it, probably 50 people plus in the first couple of days that somehow made it to my Telegram channel, my X channel. Patriot Underground was here on Saturday. The same 50 made it over to his channel, amazingly. And, they all managed to know somebody that knows this person. My cousin graduated, firefighter school with him 10 years ago. There's a lot of people, a lot of that goes around, and that, whether they're operators or even if they're real people, I don't doubt that they might have known the entity that was this person. But what you have to understand, and the reason I keep posting this, is Derek speaks about this extensively on all his podcasts on operational security, right? Which is paramount to the entire, to everything that's happening right now. And when you read this article and it talks about how they can literally hijack existing personality, someone's existing persona. So they could take a real name and use it for something. They can create completely new names. They create fake family members. They create fake social media. They even send them bills to their house to make it that real. And the reason I bring that up is because when somebody says, well, I was there and I saw, his nephew crying. Okay. Or, I know this is a real person because he works at my fire department. The bottom line is if somebody on this screen right now was a member of this army, you'd never know it. If your own husband was a member of the secret army, you would not know it. If your daughter was, you wouldn't know it. So when people want to pull at your heartstrings by saying, well, I used to see that guy in the coffee shop every day, he's a real person, that means he died. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Just because they're a real person does not mean that what you're being told. And if you guys don't realize that, go back and look up Sandy Hook. We did a watch party for that. 26 children. Here we are 10 years later, and 99% of America, maybe less, still thinks that 26 kids died that day, even though they've all been outed as crisis actors. And you can see a picture of them now at like 20-something years old, side by side. Yet, what did they do to Alex Jones, one of the people that came out against it? They sued him into oblivion. And by the way, that whole narrative over the last year, that was part of the operation, $1 billion settlement. Come on. That was put out to show what they do to people. But I wanted to get Derek's take on this because, you know, I've been leaning on this a lot, man. And it's the point being, I'm not saying we're not here to 100% prove what did or didn't happen. What we are here to do is explain our logic in why we think the way we do. And that article, if you read it and you study how this stuff works, like I said, your best friend, your husband, your cousin, your son could be playing a key role. Your husband could be in a mask on the stage and you wouldn't ever know it. So just saying that you know somebody that was there or know somebody that knew the guy, you got to be careful with that because these people, you would never know it. And Derek, I'd love to get your take on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I probably am is, I don't know. I think my breath gets up in my chest and I just want to lash out sometimes deep down. But, you know, I'm really passionate and taking up for a lot of guys that operate in this theater and they've done it for years. I know a lot of those special operators. You know, I always try to find an elegant way to say it without I try to, you know, like I say, paint the picture towards them. But I mean, you know, when you take an oath, and there's a lot of men out there, men and women, but a lot more males, certain roles in this position, obviously. And unfortunately, maybe females could do this more often, but there's a lot of special operators, Navy SEALs and things of that nature and special operations. There's a lot of teams out there and there's a lot of different people. You would never know they're doing what to do. And there's also been contractors. There was a video I put up not long ago of a retired command sergeant major who is now operating in the underground theater of the subterranean warfare. And he talks about it in, you know, to the detail which he can, which once again, he's versed on what he can and can't say. I have friends that come around me. We put our phones in packets, friends. All right. And we're just talking and, you know, but we can't talk about certain things, but what they're doing. So I've got friends that still operate in this kind of environment. And, you know, so there's a lot of people out there that know about this, but they're small. It's not that many people, and it's for a reason. So when you're in the masses out there and you just know the general idea of what you know about the military, when we're talking about special operations, we're talking about certain teams, it's not that many people doing that. Now, 60,000 people sounds like a lot at one time, but then when you divide that by 332 million people population, it's not a lot of people. So now what shows though is this: when you want to get into mathematics, you could say things of like the Revolutionary War. You know, the math shows 1.7 to 1.9% served. If you take how many were in the military at that time and divide it each year by the population, then you'll get your number. And it's very small of people who made an impact, and look what they did with our revolution. If you walked up on the street and you said, hey, World War II, who do you think won that? You know, most people, I think we did, you know, the people that do know. All right, then say, how many generals commanded World War II? How many do you think commanded World War II? And I did this in Arizona recently. And I said, look, I'm not going to turn the camera around and embarrass you guys. I'm not going to point one of you out. Just start naming them. I'll just name numbers. I won't even look. I'll close my eyes. Just start yelling numbers, right? Well, people were saying 50, 40, 30, things of that nature. And I heard one over here get it correctly, but it was a veteran, right? So, you know, but 14 generals commanded World War II. All right. So when think of 14 generals, that's not a lot of generals in one way. That's 14 individuals. So when you hear President Trump on the stage in 2016 say, "I have 200 generals backing me and more to come," well, 200 generals and their divisions, they could be up to 75,000 soldiers. All right. So, but once again, these special operators out there, and it all is outlined. Everything's outlined. That's why I tell people all the time, you got to go see what was put into place right before. Well, it was after President Trump announced. He was during his campaign. But April 2016, the Special Operations Command publication, it talks about government in exile, shadow government, unconventional warfare. Go read Title 50. In that paragraph, it talks about regular and irregular military. Irregular, go look at asymmetric warfare. Go look at irregular warfare in a general, but then also look at subterranean warfare. Go look at guerrilla warfare. There's a lot of things that they have used in the past that it gets in there. But especially that Special Operations Command, it's got a diagram in there, and it is a beautiful diagram. And you read every line on it, and you're going to be like, oh, man, I remember all that. You will know what you've been watching if you've been paying attention yearly from 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. And then you'll hear people out there say stuff like, the president can't declare war. Yes, he can. The War Powers Act gave him that. That was the 73 that did that, national emergencies. But getting back to the special operators, I mean, it's you wouldn't want to know them, because if you knew them, they'd give up who they are. All right. But they can blend in. Even regular military can blend in. Look at what the military's been doing this whole time. The National Guard out of the states every single day. Look at the foreign entities over here every day. There have been foreign aircraft on municipal, county, and regional airports. Those are your tinier airports in rural areas operating daily. So military can work around you. Just a normal military can work around you. But special operators, you never know who they are. They can blend right in. The mass, we've been using mass for a long time. And they've shown you this as well. So there's a lot of things that they're showing you, but as far as the special operators, no one's going to know. If I was one of them, you wouldn't know it, because everybody is trained to talk in ways that you would never know that. And even in your regular, just basic training in the military, you learn how to talk to the media. So when you're a special operator, you definitely know how to talk. And most of them aren't talking. Is the biggest thing. You're not talking unless you are used as someone that's a hey, distraction piece over here in a different manner as a disclosure. But it wouldn't be to mislead you. It wouldn't be to be the same kind of tactic like the subversive language. Not right now. It wouldn't be not this late in the game. It wouldn't be that. But all these different people have been operating in this for years. And that's why it's important when they can talk. Someone like Michael Jaco, when someone like Colonel Sellers and Lieutenant Colonel Bosey, all these guys in special operations, Green Berets, when they can talk, listen to them. They know what they can and can't say. They already know that. But when they can talk, listen to those guys. They're the ones that operated in it for 25, 30 years, in multiple different kinds of theaters. But yeah, you would never know it. You never know it. So, and that's a good thing.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think speaking of actors, it's probably a good transition into the removal of the actor or actors that we've been keeping our eyes on for the last 3 years. And obviously, everyone knows the news yesterday that Biden is fake Biden, I should say, is not seeking a second term. And again, we talked about this at the top of the show. It's everything. Last week, we had the mainstream media talking about Nessa and Dorma and the sum of all fears and how Donald Trump is sending a message. There's a giant conspiracy theory that Donald Trump's sending a message. I mean, literally, Charles Payne read it practically right out of the Q drops. And then if that wasn't enough, then yesterday when this story broke, and this has already gone viral today, and it's actually been mentioned in the media as well. It's not being hidden. And this is something that Derek's been pointing out, and many people have been pointing out for years at this point, these are the side-by-side letters. Obviously, the left is a real White House stationery, and the right is what was released yesterday. And everybody, this is where this is where we get to kind of sit back at this point, and we all have a lot of work to do. But I don't need to go and point this out to all my friends anymore, because now what's happening is that next wave of people that are all starting to figure this stuff out, they're doing it. Just like Derek mentioned, the mask technology. You had Patrick Bet-David on his podcast just about a month ago do a whole segment on how they believe Biden's wearing a mask, and that went viral. And then it started. So they're starting to normalize a lot of this stuff. It's very clear to me that they are. And there's the two different signatures. There's the inconsistencies, and everybody's starting to pick up on it now. But Derek, I wanted to get your commentary on just the developments over the last 24 hours with the entity formerly known as Joseph Robinette Biden, because although none of us know where this is headed, what I find interesting, and I posted this today, is right now there are 9 states: Alabama, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, New Mexico, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Washington that are past the ballot deadline for this election. Now, again, we all know we're in a continuity government. We understand this is part of the show, but now I'm speaking in normie term. And I think Derek, what I find interesting is we've been talking about this for a while, that it seems to me that many of these things, there's always 2 or 3 purposes for one of these psyops, because that's what this is. Psyop got somehow turned into a bad thing. In this case, it's not. It's a counter psyop. But psychological operations, these stories, these narratives, I think have many different reasons. Each time they put something out, it has 2, 3, sometimes 4 meanings. We talked about the assassination. I think that was first and foremost a psyop to sway public opinion and get people to see. I think that's ultimately going to lead to something a lot more. I mean, we see it headed down the path of blowing back to the Biden administration. So we got to see where that heads. But it's got echoes of JFK in it, the multiple shooters, the media being complicit, the Secret Service being complicit, the FBI, the local law enforcement. So in my opinion, and they've been doing this over and over the last 3 years, everything that is coming out is being done in a way, it's almost like an instant replay of some of these false flags, except this time, like Mark pointed out on Saturday, the media is actually amplifying the conspiracy theories. They're actually putting out, look, it was the Secret Service, it was the director, they didn't have they can't cover it up anymore. And with Biden, I see the same thing. My take, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, is there is certainly, first and foremost, with Biden, since that train wreck of a debate, it's moved the public into the purview of a exposure operation of not only Biden, but the media that covered up for him. And you could see that narrative has been going on for 3 weeks at this point. And now with Biden being removed, or, stepping aside for the election, we're getting a narrative out of all people, AOC, who I believe is a white hat plant, putting out that there was a coup done against President Biden. And where I think all this is leading is they're trying to really expose to people the fact that 2020, they exposed the world to election fraud in a big way. And I think 2024, in this case, they're exposing people to pre-election fraud. The idea that you don't get to pick this guy who's ostensibly the president of the United States running for re-election, that would otherwise win the Democratic nomination. Nope. In less than 3 weeks, when they want to get rid of somebody and put in who they want, you guys don't have a choice. And I see a lot of people ignoring the ballot deadline because they're going to have to do something in the show to show people you can't just switch them out. And I see so many people talking about yesterday. I saw so many people out, celebrating, oh, that's it, he's not going to run. And not one of them knew that there was 9 states past the ballot deadline. So I think what's about to happen over the next few weeks is you're going to see a giant shit show heading into the Democratic convention. I think people are going to learn a whole lot over, again, optically, who controls the strings, and then 2, how these things work. Because let's face it, the average person doesn't. They just wake up and they're told by the media Biden's not running and it's going to be Hillary, and they go, okay, and they go on about their day. So What do you see in this? I mean, again, none of us like to make predictions on what's going to happen, but I think there's a good case here for what they're trying to get at with this phase of the movie, the show, if you will, when it comes to Biden stepping aside and now this whole crisis going on in the background.
Well, there's two things, for the people who are awake, right? It's validity for everybody. That's your validation. That's it's like a sigh of relief that it wasn't for me, because I knew what's going on. And I'm like, I know what a military occupation is, being a veteran, and I had a grandfather that went through this. They operated through this. My great uncles operated through this. So it's more not validity for me. It's more honoring my grandfathers and my great uncles who operated in that, and me being able to recognize it and see that hey y'all, don't, like 2 years ago, hey, I don't know why God just brought me on the scene right now, but don't panic. This is all. Joe Biden had 3 cannons at Arlington. That is a funeral service for a foreign dignitary. They're showing you the monarchy's dead. All right, we're going into an occupation. This is the occupation really would have started throughout January 20th, 2021 to where we are right now. This is the occupational part. The first 4 years was President Trump going in legislatively and doing all these things and cleaning out the legislation. And then we're now the executive branch. That's why January 15th, 2021, the publication that was put out by the Continuity of Operations, right? It says the reconstitution of the executive branch. So then you see that portion's going into a continuity a different way in the military occupation. All right. And so President Trump's told everybody that we're going to take it back 4 years. Why are the same swing states as 2020? Right? Why there's so many things that's showing people. He said, we will restore law and order. If you got to restore it, it means you got to bring it back. Where did it go? Well, that's martial law, military occupation. You suspend the Constitution. That's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the Constitution. When people say that's unconstitutional, well, it says it in the Constitution. It's called the suspension clause, called a writ of habeas corpus. It can be done. And President Trump told you in March 2020, you don't know who the invisible enemy is. We do. So he was telling you this is not a war on the ground. This is a war of alliances, right? The European Union versus United Nations. He ended NAFTA. He put in the USMCA. He established the Abraham Accords. He hammered NATO. What did they show everybody in the debate? He made Biden said, when I was running for president, NATO were pulling their weight. Yeah, when you were running. What's that mean? Who was the president who made them pull their weight? Donald John Trump. So see, they show everybody that. So everybody, this is validity to see the signatures. And by the way, September the 5th, 2021, I have a screenshot timestamped of Wikipedia showing the original Joe Biden signature. Now the Wikipedia page shows the J.R. Biden Jr., which is polar opposite, all right, which is the one he was, quote unquote, signing executive orders with, which is also the polar opposite of the one that they just showed just yesterday or the day before, whatever it was, So the inconsistencies, and if you look at the B's, right, and then you look over right past the B, one shows a little dash above the I for the I, the dotting of the I, and then is he signing on behalf of the Bidens? It has an S on the end of it. It says J.R. Bidens. It's plural. It's not J.R. Biden. So there's so much stuff that they're showing you. No letterhead. All right. But then for what that's it. Look, see, it's got an S on the end. All right. Where did the junior go all of a sudden? Right. It's not saying junior anymore. That's not a JR. That's a S. So they're doing is validating. They're validating everybody that either woke up when I came out the gate, when Dave started saying, whoever was following who and what, that was showing you all this, they're validating you, the people out there, that you're not crazy. This is real. This ain't crazy. Joe Biden is not real. It's a puppet state, a government in exile, World War II tactic. They did this. The best analogy is the Philippines with the two presidents, even though in that scenario back then, the guy that was playing the president was actually taking on questions in another manner, and the people thought he was real, and he was a real person. He wasn't an actual puppet or an actor in the sense of a mask. like that. He looked different than President Kazan. So that's the only slightly difference. But this has been done before. And so, the thing that I think the disclosure is this: why did they have a debate before the normal debates? Right? See, no one's paying attention to that. There's never been a debate before in June, and they've always been in September and October, right before November. All right. And so they're showing you, like you just said, that you can't, like that's what, most people do understand that, hey, you can't just install who you want to install. This is a system that they're exposing. It's not necessarily people, they're exposing the system. All right. And then that's also what validates you, the Patriots, is this. You've been witnessing this. We've all witnessed this our whole life, right? The RNC operates differently than the Democrats, right? The Democrats, they have a different process. They've been riding with Biden the whole time. They never sought to look at anybody differently. How come? Why didn't they question that? You know what? His age was already there. Like that didn't just pop up all of a sudden and go, oh, we need to question his age and his cognitive skills. No. Why didn't they look at something before? So your typical normal, what you've seen in your past, however old you are, it doesn't matter. You've seen a Republican and Democrat. You've seen all these different people come out run. Well, they had to show you a little bit. So they showed you Nikki Haley. They showed DeSantis making some chatter. They showed Vivek, however you say his name, the V. That's all I call him. I can't ever say it. I'm from the South. Forgive me. Right. But, and so they showed you a little bit, but nothing real crazy. But with Biden, they never showed you anybody up for, hey, I think that, we need someone younger, fresher, more sharper, and they can take whatever. Even though we know that 4 years wasn't real, but they never showed you that. And then they had this debate. Now look what happened. But people forget, what did President Trump say on the golf course July the 3rd? He's sitting in the golf cart and he drops the F-bomb. I'm sorry, Christians out there, but Donald Trump drops the F-bomb a lot. All right, he does. It's just the way he is. All right, I have no problem with that. I didn't vote for him to be a preacher, a shrink, a coach. I voted for him to be a wartime president if it ever called on it, and that's what called on. But he said it on the golf cart that he specifically said, yeah, Joe Biden's out. He's done. I got him out of there. He said this July the 3rd, right? This is long before this. I mean, yeah, they were already chattering about his age and stuff, but no, he said, I knocked him out. And he said what? He said it sounds like he calls Kamala the B word. It's what it sounds like to me. But anyway, and he says what? I will do what? I will also knock her out too, right? And I think what they're using with Kamala is this. Now the narrative on Twitter with the low-level liberals and the low-level Democrats, they're either taking the age of President Trump now and twisting it with Kamala, or they're saying that a black woman no way in history will an old white man beat a black woman. I think what they're going to do is also crush all this bullcrap about race that has been put on everybody. Because anybody who yells racism, they're the ones keeping racism going. It's not the people living their everyday life. Ain't nobody in the South discriminating on anybody. We got people in the South now that come to the barbecues. They're black and white, interracial. Ain't nobody down here making no hill of beans about that bull crap. Ain't nobody doing that. So I think that narrative is also going to crush the whole race narrative, because what did they do to us? They, the deep state, pinned us against our own core values in America, which are race, religion, and also patriotism. So I think a lot of these are part of that as well, to show that just because you're an older white male doesn't mean anything towards that. And I think if they chose Kamala, but Obama has not, as of earlier today, Obama hasn't chosen Kamala. And that's the one they're saying will do the choosing, which shows the what? It still shows the real dictatorship. So it's kind of like when some of you out there, I'm not trying to open up a new old wound, but a lot of you may have had someone cheat on you in the past, and now you're through it. But you remember, a lot of people who cheat on you, they do what? They start accusing you of cheating because they got a guilty conscience, right? So they deflect it over to you, and you're like, I ain't even been out of the house. I don't even go out of the house hardly. Like I'm a couch potato. You yell at me all the time for being a couch potato. How can I cheat on you when you're always around me? right? So it's always those that accuse you of something that are actually doing that. All right. And so they're exposing so many things at all at one time. But when you look at the timeline, like you just said, the states, there's rules and procedures around this. You can't just go, whoa, we changed our mind. No, we have what President Trump talks about with what? We need same-day voting, voter ID. There's certain rules that we've established, and they're showing you that they're trying to break all the rules again, right? And as you said, not election day, but pre-election now. It's very important because what you've seen was they had a debate in June. There's never been a debate in June. The last time there was not an audience was 1960. All right. So, I mean, think of all the stuff you've seen out there that's not consistent with the past, but some of it's not consistent on purpose in a good way, but some of it's also not consistent on purpose to highlight what they've been doing. All right. And I think there's multifaceted stuff they're showing everybody at one time. And then once again, what do we have? It's July 22nd. We all know how fast a month will go by. September the 12th, 2024, Executive Order 13848 must be either terminated or extended again, all right, by Joe Biden. So we'll see, but that's your election interference. And after the shooting, President Trump didn't back down from his position. He was already on True Social saying election interference, and all these other things, and Biden crime family and all this. So this ain't over. So all these executive orders that Biden's been extended by Trump that make no sense whatsoever are going to come into play. And now we're stepping closer to see those come into play. Also, real quick, just real fast, President Trump just said a month ago in Las Vegas, he said, I hope the military revolts at the voting booth. We don't vote at voting booths in the military. It don't matter where we are. We vote absentee ballots. So that didn't have anything to do with, I hope the military shows up, votes for me. Don't have anything to do with that. So why would Donald Trump say something out there that if the media was still the left-wing media of days of old, Mark, help me out here, Mark. I'm not picking on you, but hey, you're the perfect one to use here. Perfect one to use right here, baby. If Donald Trump, if 78-year-old old Donald Trump that the liberals are all of a sudden trying to do now, if 78-year-old white man, old Donald Trump was saying, I hope the military revolts at the voting booth, that would be treason. And that would also break 18 United States Code 2381, 2384, 2385, which would be advocate to what? Seditious activity to do what? Overthrow the government. Okay. So if we weren't in a military occupation, he wouldn't be able to say that. And the left-wing media would annihilate Donald Trump for saying that.
Well, let's be honest also. The Constitution to the cabal means nothing except on the rare occasions where it's convenient.
Right.
And you brought up, in regard to camel toe, you brought up the race card and you brought up the feminist card. I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't think that would crack you up. I'm glad it did. But, all those cards brought up. And for us, the Constitution is used as a teaching point and a direction that this is what we need to get back to. Now, by virtue of that, with camel toe being an anchor baby, how can she be vice president, nevertheless be president? Now, we know they're going to kick her to the curb anyway, but how could she possibly be the president of the United States when her parents were not citizens?
Well, they do say that just off base of my research, that anchor baby is granted citizenship. So that's a interesting question because it goes back to 1868 and the 14th Amendment. But then again, we have to look and see where Congress violated through the years. I mean, I think that's what people fail to remember is that every year there's a new Congress. Now, even though there's some that's been in there like Joe was for 38 years, there's some that they're what we call lifers, right? They're in there for life, basically. All right. And then we got to see what their agenda was and their motives for passing certain things. Just like 1951, when Congress put term limits on the president, but not themselves. Well, one, you can't, nowhere in the Constitution that does give them the authority to do so. So we'll have to go back and look at that. But as it sits right now, according to 1868 14th, that an anchor baby is granted citizenship. But, to me, it goes back to, I think that, that's a hard one in another manner. But, I believe that we're not all immigrants. We are all Americans. We were immigrants, but that's you shed that title when you become an American. But I think it does open up the can of worms for Obama as well. I think this, I hope Clint Eastwood lives long enough to see his awesome empty chair when he slammed it on that, when he was up there and he said, "See this empty chair?" I hope that all that, and this is, I think, is an exposure of all of it, because whether it's Kamala being illegal or not, there's been others that Obama is a direct right out the gate that we can say, okay, we can't prove that you were born in Hawaii. There's no proof of that, right? And they know this. There's a lot of people, and I know somebody right now that's kind of one of those we're talking about, not a known face, but was high ranking, and they have absolute hardcore evidence fact, because of certain things they were doing that he is not. So I think it opens up the massive can of worms for a lot of things, because I think some of it is still a level of distraction to distract people. Like today, Gitmo was in Haiti twice today, and that's all I could see. I didn't get to check all day. But what's Gitmo doing down in Haiti? Well, there's a Supreme Court down there in Haiti. All right. So, a lot of things are starting to be distraction. There was a B-52 bomber that was flying from Alaska all the way across the U.S. today. Colonel Sellers that did the forward on my book, full bird colonel, retired, special operations, former deputy commander, Delta Force. He said, "I have not seen a B-52 in the sky since we first went into Iraq." So there's a lot of B-52 movement right now. There's a lot of other kind of movement with the E-6s. There's an E-6 in the sky, at least 2 E-6s all day, every day, which is a form of a doomsday plane. So it goes into President Trump's, "I will prevent nuclear war. I will prevent World War III." So there's a lot of stuff that's distractions. There's about 6 Chinese balloons in the sky as we speak right now out in Nevada, right around Reno. All right, even though they're not Chinese, as we know, they're all United States registration, but they're 65,000 feet up, which are not a hot air balloon. So there's a lot of stuff that's, I think, distractory still with all this. And great, like you said, Dave. I mean, you take it is your typical flag, a death, right? That really distracts people. That gets people but it's engaging them, but they're distracted. And it's perfect. Hey, look over here, watch this right here. Boom, 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 striking over here. But so I think that with where we are, into July, getting over into August, but then getting up to September the 12th will be here before you know it. So we'll see. And then rapid fire to November. But the military revolting, that's a massive comment. And I know people have been called back to duty. I get text messages from friends that their friend's husband or wife, whoever, got called back to duty. So, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be rapid fire from here to there. So anyway.
And what you
Absolutely.
said before about us all being Americans.
That's right.
You picked on me for this before, so I'll take it.
Yeah, and you're supposed to shed the old. Like, it's kind of like a renewal. Like, I buy into this culture. I buy into we the people, the Revolutionary War. You got to buy into that. And we are in a war of spiritual warfare, first off, and an information warfare, because the light is exposing that darkness. And when that happens, it's kind of like kicking an ant bed over. Or one of the grossest things I can't stand in the South is because we got a lot of trees down here. And at night, in the middle of nowhere, you shine a light on the ground and there's cockroaches. I don't like that. They're just slithery. I don't know something about them. I would eat one if I had to, like for survival. So, but yeah, but still, they're great protein. However, I don't like their slithery moves. So it's like when the light shines on them, or you kick an ant bed over and all the ants go crazy, right? Well, the queen, if you watch the queen of an ant bed, they're not moving as crazy. All the other ones are going down there, but the queen is like real cool, moving real collective. All right, so I think it's, I don't go around kicking ant bands over, but I'm just saying I do occasionally run one over with a lawnmower just for the fun of it. But you just got to observe that every now and then to get that's how you get your, this is what it looks like. So I think a lot of people would just learn to be patient. It's okay to question everything. It's okay to question something like that. Don't get upset with that. That's why 9/11 happened. No one questioned it. No, a few of us did, but not the mass majority, right? So don't get mad or you question the death. My goodness. I mean, it's okay. Like, did Osama bin Laden really die? It's okay to question that. Did Saddam Hussein really die? It's okay to question that. Gaddafi wanted to establish a gold standard. Why did he get killed by the Democrats? So see, if you question that in a good way, Gaddafi actually wanted to establish the gold standard again. So that's why you need to question the death, because that one actually is playing out right now, that this guy was killed way back here when he was probably one of us in another nation. All right. So that's why you got to question certain things and not be quick to shoot the messenger so much and go, hey, let me go study this for myself. And then, like those guys on the range, I've been looking, I found the same type of a range setup, but it wasn't that. But it was the same everything, same kind of tactics, everything. But I was hoping one of those guys would do that to show that, little things. And it is always the little things. But the other thing is, because special operators are smaller groups, highlight them. This is our moment to highlight what they do on a daily, and hope we never get here again to have to do this. That's why it's important for us to question everything. That's why it's important for us to acknowledge everything and to show people what is going on, because we want to maintain and sustain what these men and women have done with what Donald Trump has answered the call for, the military generals, men and women, and also world generals, men and women, and also world leaders that came together for this. It shows they're on one heartbeat. And their history will account for it. History is going to account for this, because if they did all this just to stay in the same rigmarole that we went through in all of our lives right here, it would be for nothing. Because with the population where it is, and if they never expose what's happened with children, which that will unite, I think, 95% of the world, as Q says, it will be the uniter. But if we didn't do that, then my goodness, I mean, it would still look the same, because people wouldn't have the answers and also the validity, the validation, and the exoneration on all levels. Because a lot of President Trump's exoneration is going to validate a lot of us. So his exoneration is going to be validity. All right. And then his exoneration, though, for the others are going to expose what's been going on under this corporation for many, many years.
Well, one of the things I think will help us move along with that, and it's something that's always been in the forefront of my mind, which is why I brought up the Americans thing, that people have to remember that all those adjectives that have been put out there to divide us and conquer us, who was it that pushed them and purported them? Mainstream media. So take that from back here and put it right here, because it should always be the forefront and remind you of who not to trust.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Derek, as always, you've been so generous with your time. We're coming up on 2 hours. Before we get to final words, I wanted to add one more thing that I missed before, that I wanted to introduce. I didn't get to show it on Saturday because I didn't realize it yet. But just kind of to add, leave everybody a little bit of food for thought on what you're watching and how much of a show it is. And, I had done, I've been keeping kind of a running post on Telegram and X about the number of times, as we do on this channel, it's what we call it, Channel 17, the number of times that 17s come up, right? Trump was shot at 6/11, 6 plus 11 is 17. The date was 7/13/24. That adds up to 17. This character who was playing the Secret Service director was sworn in on the 17th of September in 2022. Biden got COVID on the 17th. He decided to step down exactly 107 days from the election. You know, just six of them right there. This is what Q talks when it says how many times before it's how many coincidences before mathematically impossible. But there's one more that I love when, you know, Derek Jonhson likes to speak about military precision, and that applies to all aspects of a military operation, and not the least of which is the commander in chief when they're running a psychological operation. And you mentioned the jacket, which we all caught onto, and we touched on that on Saturday, and that connects to the Q drops and the misspelling and all those different things. But one of our own viewers, Jackpot Johnny 48, pointed this out in the comments on Saturday, and I had to go and check it myself. Let's watch Donald Trump's moment of silence and watch the upper right-hand side of the screen in this video that I just made.
We observe a moment of silence in honor of our friend Corey. There is no greater.
Exactly 17 seconds long. I mean, the man literally paused for exactly 17 seconds before he started talking again. You simply cannot make that up. And, you know, these are the type of things. I had some people on X today saying, well, you guys can't make everything about Q. No, I can't. But when there's 6 different instances and counting where it comes up, that's what we talk about, where it's mathematically impossible. It literally defies the logic, the statistical, it defies all principles of statistics of random number distribution to have that number come up so many times around the same events. It literally defies all statistical laws of random number distribution. And I just wanted to kind of show that to everybody because, you know, that's just another thing that you can't make up. And I had somebody say to me, well, how would he know how to do that? The man is a genius. And whoever that is, whether it was him up there or not, but anybody that's in a position at this point that's involved in any of this stuff, regardless of what you believe is real or not, is going to be trained to the nth degree in how to do something like you just saw without making it look obvious. You know, he's trained for it. And if you ever watch...
And without him, you know, giving him all the credit, let's not forget about this. Right there in his ear. 15, 16, boom, go.
Yeah, but even when he does rallies, I mean, how many times do you see he wraps up his speech? He's looking like he's ad-libbing, and then he finishes the speech right on the 17-minute marker of the hour. You know, there is so much precision to what's going on that we'll probably spend the rest of our lives trying to study. It's incredible. It really is. But something like that, it's just, come on.
Well, that's even like I talk about I talk about my book. I'm like, I can't put what I originally tried to do in my book was put all the laws and orders written out. And when I submitted it to my publicist, he's like, dude, this is like an encyclopedia, like, you know, like a set. Not even like one encyclopedia. He's like, you got to condense this down, you know, like, because I wanted to put all of it there. But it's so funny though. But I mean, there would be like if you went and if you had a book on all the 17s, it's going to be. Oh, I mean, I don't even know what it would depend on your font too, like how. But I mean, it's going to be like big, like because it's just. I mean, it really is. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't make it up. And you know, to me, it's still also God driven. It's God divine, because I was talking to a friend today about the attacks that, you know, that even I'm experiencing, which I mean, I'm like, it's part of war, right? You're going to have attacks. But the other thing is just like that, well, that still the big divider line is God, because God knows all things, sees all things, hears all things. And also, what we're experiencing, no matter how you believe in God, I'm not here to decide that for people, but whether it's a spiritual form or a light or whatever that may be, you know, but still, the Bible does say, you know, salt water even if the Bible is all metaphors, it doesn't matter. So it's got great stuff. I always tell people, however you want to believe in it, if you don't, it still has great metaphors, great speeches. But it says salt water and fresh water can't flow in the same spring. Because I guarantee you there's one thing you don't want to drink when you're thirsty. It's going to be salt water. You don't want any of that. So, it can't flow from the same spring. So when you look at what you're watching, when we say question everything, it's okay to question everything because a truth is a truth, even if no one believes it. A lie is a lie if everyone believes it. So, like truth's going to always prevail. And it sounds so cliche, but it does. Motives of people will always play out because they'll be consistent and consistent and consistent. Now, there are people out there that make mistakes. They shouldn't be beat up for having a bad day. A bad day doesn't mean you have a bad life. But when you look at everything, I was telling a friend today, I'm like, God's still going to be the ultimate deciding factor, however people believe in it, because you have people on the left, they claim to support the Constitution. They claim to support the Declaration. They claim to be Christians, a lot of them. They claim that, and you can't look vicious and malicious with it. So it's like Jaco, we were all talking the other day. We called in a show, all us veterans, and we're like, but we have our priest over here who was a major West Point graduate. We have him there, and we pick on him in a good way, saying, all right, we have our priest here. It's like he says, love, the Bible says, I gave you a power of love, a power, and a sound mind, right? So you won't be people viciously attacking on our levels. You don't need to be viciously attacking on all levels. If your friend questions more than you question, let them question that. Don't get mad at them. Let them question it. They may have to have a little bit more understanding than you. But when you see people attacking or promoting something, that it shows their motives in another manner versus it's okay to have a book and products. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's what their motives are. So on our level right now, 3 months to go, you can't make this stuff up, but God's still going to be that deciding factor. That's why I tell people, hang strong, because look, when the Bible tells you in Psalms 23, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Well, death is absolute, and that's the final of your life. You have a birth date and a death date. There's your dash in the middle. All right. Well, if God's going to protect, he's telling me I'll protect you all the way to the end. So that means everything in between that dash, you ain't got nothing to fear. Now, do you understand that dash in between 45 and 47? Like you have nothing to fear right here, right? Because that is a divine dash. That's not a coincidental dash. It's no different than all these 17s. They're not coincidental. We can't even sit here. And if I said, all right, Dave, now's your time to shine, baby. Rattle them off. Rattle as many as you can right now. Give me 20. Right? It'd be hard to do because there's been so many. You'd have to go, okay, hold on. Let me think of all the stuff I've seen. Right? It'd be hard to do because there's been so many of them. And it's the same thing I do with the laws and orders. There's so much stuff that's already been shown that you're like, okay, well, what do you want to see? Like, okay, Executive Order 13959, the freezing of the assets. There's 2,500 pages on the SEC.gov of names. That's pages of names, right? So, like, what do you want to see? At this point, we're so far with so much evidence that it's just like you would have to. The books will look like they look like Obamacare, like that. Each book,
Yeah,
but
anyway. I always say at some point I'm going to have to pay somebody to go through, or a team of people to go through my Telegram channel from the last 3 years and pull out all the 17s that just I've found, let alone all the other people out there that are doing this. And that video that came because of another Anon that watches our show and mentioned it in a chat. So, that's what I always remind people, where just like Derek is sitting here today collaborating with us, that's what happens when people don't focus on ego and trying to make a platform, I'm the best, I'm the greatest. When they don't do that and we all work together because we all pick up on different things, that's what's so great about it is, when people collaborate, we see even more. And in something like this, there's 9 different ways to look at everything, 9 different ways to read a comm. And so that's why one of the things that I enjoy is speaking and interacting with different people, because different people see different things. And I think at this point, since we're a little bit over 2 hours, I always like to wrap up by giving everybody a chance to kind of give their last thoughts. So I'll start with Mark and then move on to Derek. This has been, as always, Derek, I love listening to you, man. You've had some epic shows, especially in the last couple of weeks, where you have this uncanny ability to just speak about this at long lengths of time and in great detail, but also keep everyone engaged the whole time. So I always enjoy this stuff as much as anybody listening. And 2 hours of this tonight is a blessing for all of us. So on that note, we'll run down the line. Mark, what do you think? Last comments, last thoughts on tonight and where we're going?
What you were just addressing was absolutely it, because again, that unity platform is so important. Listening, doing something that's been taken away from us for decades. Listening to other people, hearing them, and even if you disagree, having the conversation without the yelling and the screaming and, cursing people out because you don't agree with what they've said or vice versa. It's important that we all have that unity moment. And you do learn by listening to other people's points of view. From the day that you're born till the day you die, when you think you've learned everything there is, you've already died. So that's a very, very important thing. Tonight, being here with Derek is like tying everything together. This is in reality what journalism is all about. The people, you've heard me say it before, the people who are out there now aren't journalists, they're editorialists. They're giving you their opinion. And we can tell you our opinion about the shooting or the attempted assassination, or about Biden being real or fake, all of those things. Those are our opinions. But when you get Derek presenting factual evidence that you can look at in government documents, it ties it all together. And it brings it all together to a point where you say, okay, dispute it now. So people have to learn to have the conversations, listen, discuss, learn, and discern, and learn to discern. And when you do that, you're advancing yourself. And Derek, thank you very much for being here tonight. It was fantastic, huge eye opener, and again, ties everything together with factual information.
Derek, anything you want to leave the people with?
Honored to be here. Well, I always tell people too, you can run an operation within an operation, like what I'm doing right here. I'm making Colorado State have to own up that I'm one of theirs because they're a liberal college. So see, just like that right there, I'm like, hey, I got my MBA there. And, if I would have walked around that campus going, yeah, military occupation, they want to hang me, boy. But so an operation can run within an operation. But, I tell people like that, I know, like the Mark Twain thing, like I finally know what God's called me to do, my purpose in life, because there wouldn't be country music if we didn't get this fixed, right? This is a greater mission right now where we are in life. And I know that my abilities, what I'm doing, I would be a disservice to my own service in the military if I didn't take what I can retain and put out there. But at the same time, I always talk with people. I'd say, look, I mean, you really think that like, you think it feels good to watch people attack your name? No. But when you're called for it, God, once again, I believe in God and I believe in, his role in my life. But I tell people, if God will bring you to it, he'll lead you through it. Right. So it's like, it's just like he never promised that the cross wouldn't be heavy. The hill wouldn't be hard to climb. He never offered our victories without fighting, but he said help would always come in time. right? So that's an old gospel song out there by the Crab Family. If you go listen to that song got me through a lot of days where I didn't know. Like when I got out of the military and all this stuff, I was like, man, you know. And then I started seeing all these things, and I started documenting that right there. And then all of a sudden, things just started clicking. Like when President Trump started putting this stuff in, I'm like, man, this is brilliant, right? And I was sort of like, how come, you know, I didn't know everybody that other people were existing out there seeing that. I'm talking about my little world. How come people can't see this, right? Especially our good old boys and you know, things that the good old boys will fight. Now, ain't no doubt about it, but this ain't that kind of fight. So, you know, so I tell people, look, I mean, it's you know, it's the greatest moment in world history. Everybody's watching. And I always tell the story right before I went viral. I went to church with my family, and there's an older Marine Corps guy there, and I think he was 84 at the time. They sat me with him, and they were like, tell him a little bit. And I set up what's going on. And he asked me every difficult question that you could possibly ask me. And guess what, Mark and Dave, especially Dave, guess how long he was in the Marine Corps? 17 years.
17 years.
and he was seriously he was in the Marine Corps years ago for 17 years during Korea. All right. And so into World War II, throughout Korea, early 60s. And when I told him all this, and he asked me some difficult questions, so I'm telling you what, he had real questions, military questions, and I just kept, you know, well, President Trump did this, and this, and that, and this. And he just, 84, he flexed his muscles. He was wearing his Marine Corps, their tan looking shirt without the medals and everything. He wore that every time I saw him at church. He wore that shirt. He's still dressed in his attire without the medals and everything. All right. But he flexed his muscles just like that. And he went, it's happening. It's happening. And he was talking about what the generals had said. Never again will we let happen in this country what happened under JFK. If we get a chance to take over, we will. Well, he read my documents. He did it. 84. He had an email address. That was back before I was viral, so I was adding a few people on the Google Doc. Well, 2 weeks later, I saw him, and he said, "Son," he was like, "I want you to do one thing, and I think God will bless you." And I think that you'll have a voice in history somehow. And this is how he said it. He said, if you will add at the beginning of those documents that you're watching a biblical, monumental, historical operation. He said, add biblical everywhere you go. And he's like, this is gonna change a lot of people's lives. He said this in June. Matter of fact, it was June 28th, one of those dates. So the same date as the quote unquote the debate. Right. So June 28th and June 28th to August 24th, you know, my world changed. So I tell people, though, I mean, you know, I knew to expect to all this, and I was called and ready for it. But, you know, don't worry about that stuff. I tell people all the time, don't worry about that stuff. Hey, you know, people are going to say what they want to say, but that don't mean anything. I know people worked on Wall Street when stuff hit the fan, that people go, that all the people, oh my gosh, such, and they go, and so big deal. That's the way you want to be, you know. And I tell people all the time, I sleep like a baby. It's not that I don't care about you. I do care about people, but I don't lay there and let it stew on me because I know, you know what? I know what I know because God led me to it, and He'll lead me through it. But He also can lead you to it, and that's what we're all here for. And it's there. Like I tell people, it's there. You know, you just got to go read it or listen. But it's there, you know. So all our validity, everybody in the comment box, I mean, our validity, our validation, our vindication, as President Trump calls it, it's all coming to fruition, and it's going to keep coming. And it won't be about that on the flip side, no. But at least that you will know the whole time that you did what you're supposed to do. Because when I stand in front of God, if it looks that way, I don't know what it's going to look like. But if it's something like standing in front of Him, He won't say, Derek, you could have done more. You should have done more. he might slap me on the wrist or whatever he does for punishment for saying a few choice words. But it won't be, you could have done more, you should have done more. So that's my attitude.
And we're thankful for it, Derek. You know, I got to say, first and foremost, on behalf of everybody here, and I'm speaking mainly from my own personal experience, I just, you know, want to again thank you for everything you've done and you're doing. You're, you know, as I said in the top of the show, your steadfast position and your steadiness through this entire thing has really helped a countless number of people, you know, myself included. As I said, I was probably, when you went viral, I had been working on this stuff behind the scenes for a couple of years, but I was kind of in that position where I was wondering, like, am I the only one that sees this? So very similar to your story. And then, you know, you came along and you really started putting rubber to the road on so much of this stuff. And you've been just one of, if not the most consistent person that I know of in this movement, as far as being able to, you know, deliver this to the people. And, you know, you're somebody that goes out there and gives your time. I mean, to so many people. You know, you are constantly doing podcasts. You've been always gracious with us about giving us a lot of time, and you do the same thing with so many other people, because it's clear to anybody that's paying attention that you're somebody that cares first and foremost about the message and being able to help people. You know, to think that there's any other reasoning behind it, when this is a guy that doesn't have a website with a paywall and doesn't have a membership service or anything like that he's trying to push. He's simply giving his time to dozens and dozens of podcasts every month to bring the message to people. And so, you know, Derek, you deserve all the accolades and all the credit in the world for what you've been doing. So I just first and foremost, you know, want to thank you, because you've hands down been one of the best teachers to people in this movement. And, you know, somebody said to me on X today, they tagged me in a post, and they said, you know, they named 3 other truthers. It doesn't matter who it is. And they named you, and they named me, and they named the people. They said, I don't know who to listen to. And I wrote back to them, and I said, the answer is you shouldn't listen to any of us. You should take in what we're saying and listen to yourself, because that's, you know, it's not about splitting apart what Derek says versus somebody else. It's about listening to Derek, listening to me, listening to whoever you pick, doesn't matter. Listening to Mark and taking that information and coming to your own conclusion. And at the end of the day, I mentioned this on Saturday, when I criticize or I vent about people not getting it, or people in our movement not getting it, it's not because they don't agree with me. It's because it's where people don't go through the same process of thinking critically, because that's how we got here, right? If you guys went through a detailed process and you disagree with us or me on a certain topic, that's fine. And there's lots of people who do. But it's about all of us being able to say at the end of the day that we all took the time to figure some things out before we just went and repeated what people say. And Derek is the perfect example of something like that, because although he does all these podcasts, you don't just have to take what he says. He literally built an entire website right here to back up everything he said. So the idea is go there and look at it. You know, go to the documents.info, buy Derek's book on Amazon, Midnight Rider Rides Again. It's all laid out in such a cohesive manner, and decide for yourself. But the evidence is all there. And it's where we get frustrated is when people just want to turn around and say, well, you know, this guy said Dave was wrong, or this guy said Mark was wrong, this guy said Derek was wrong. And when you're just parroting somebody else's information without checking it yourself, then we're all just relocating the mainstream media back to alternative media. It's no different. So, and you know, Derek has been one of the key ones that's been, you know, showing people that you can back all this stuff up. There is evidence for all of it. There's many things we talk about that we have to use conjecture and, you know, and logical inference to figure out. But with the stuff that Derek speaks about, it's all right there. It's all right there. It's all outlined. And, I do firmly believe that everybody here, as frustrated as people may be, that this is all being done for a reason. And everybody here, it doesn't matter if you sit in front of a camera. There's a lot more people than we realize out there that are looking at this stuff now and are going to be wondering as we go through the next few months, how the hell did you guys know? And that's where you guys are all going to be called upon. Whether, the Q drop 521 says, and I'm paraphrasing, you've been given the highest level of intelligence dissemination in history. And it says, use it to comfort those around you. It was written. It's one of the earlier Q drops, and it's literally put there because this is what they envision. Whether you have influence over one person or hundreds of thousands, like Derek, doesn't matter. We need all hands on deck for where this is headed. And I promise you, everybody here, there's going to be somebody, if not multiple people, that come to you as we go through the next, months. And then you're not going to wonder anymore why this took so long, because you're going to see how everyone's going to be called upon to help wrap this thing up and bring it together. And somebody like Derek Jonhson and the information he brings has been a rock for this entire thing. And as I say so many times, and I don't care if it's getting cliche at this point, everybody in this audience right now and everybody that'll watch this video or any of Derek's videos or any of Mark's videos is as critically important to this operation as somebody on the screen or somebody, out in the field right now. The whole thing is designed as a giant puzzle. It's got to fit together. Everybody's got a piece, otherwise it doesn't work. So with that, real quick, before I wrap up, I just want to remind everybody about two things. We did have a problem with Rumble last night. So if you didn't see it yet, right below this when you're done, if you're looking for something else to watch, Mark did a fantastic roundtable last night with Dr. Corey Stern on holistic healing. I know many, many people in our audience are kind of just making their way over out of the Western medicine system right now. And, it can be very confusing. So this is a great bit of information that you can look at and watch and learn. So because we didn't get to stream that last night, I posted in Telegram. It's also in Rumble. So go ahead and give that a watch and a like if you could. And then the last thing I would ask is if you guys could, especially with Derek here, I don't even care about our regular shows as much. I mean, I do, but it's for these shows. It's I ask everybody who has an account, everybody that can, please hit that thumbs up button because Derek's information is what we want to get out there to people. I can tell you from extensive experience, the more of these shows that we do, the more comments I get from people who are new, who are reaching out. There are a lot more people looking at this stuff. So if we can help the algorithm and push this out to people, it would be greatly appreciated. And then lastly, as I said, Derek Jonhson can be found at thedocuments.info or rattletrap1776.com. And his book, The Midnight Rider Rides Again, is on Amazon. And Derek, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. Mark, thank you as always. And we'll be back on Wednesday with Mike King, 8 o'clock, right here on Channel 17. Thank you all for watching. Have a fantastic day or a fantastic evening, wherever you are. And God bless you all. Take care.
Good night, everybody.